So Joe, I'm impressed with your business acumen since the beginning, because you're studying school, you're studying music with these jazz teachers, but then you start teaching guitar right away.
Yeah.
You're going to school at I think what was this college at? Five Towns College, was that it?
Well, I started teaching when I was still in high school, so that would be Carr Place High School. I was taking lessons, music theory lessons, actually classes from a guy named Bill Westcott, a young Juilliard graduate who was just really brilliant. And I went through Bill's classes as well as Steve Vai, who was about 3 years younger than me. There were a few
you guys
of us.
went to the same high school. I didn't know that, going through this research, that you guys actually went to the same high school. And did you end up teaching him some stuff? Obviously, later on, your whole catalog of musicians that you have groomed, and the ones that you have actually been your proteges, if you will. You've been their mentor. The list is crazy. I mean, I'll go on into that for a little bit, but I'm impressed that you're learning from the jazz guys, but then you're passing it on to everyone that's up and coming and all these.
Yeah, it was a beautiful time to learn music for two funny reasons that seemed to be opposing. One was I had this opportunity in this public high school to get a world-class university music education from this Juilliard graduate who was stuck in this little public school in the middle of Long Island and only had 3 students in his class. So the attention I got, especially in my last year of high school, where I graduated a half year early. So I took 2 of every class every day for 6 months and graduated early. But
were you 17 when you graduated?
I guess,
probably. Yeah, had to have been about 17, because that's the age I was. Because I did, like, when I hear your story, I'm like going, well, damn, if I would have had everything except the actual talent that you had at playing guitar at that age, everything, we're on the same pace.
I benefited from the funniest set of circumstances. I did take about, I think, 3 lessons from Billy Bauer, and that happened only because my mother was talking to somebody and just mentioned that her youngest kid was looking for guitar lessons, and somebody knew somebody. I wound up when I graduate. Well, first of all, so during that period where I'm just playing Black Sabbath and Zeppelin in my high school bands.
That was me, Jumpin' Jack Flash and all that stuff.
Yeah, it was great fun. A few years younger than me is Steve Vai. So we've known each other since we were kids. And the singer in my band had a younger brother who was the singer in Steve's band. So there was this funny little connection between the two of us. I taught Steve for about 2.5, 3 years while I was in high school. When I spent almost 1 semester at Five Towns College, did not get along with the staff at that school, and then just went out on the road. I was in a disco band at the time. But in the interim between that stage of being at Five Towns and then going out on the road, I did take a few months of lessons from Lenny Tristano, the father of cool jazz, one of the greatest musical figures of the last century. And he did sort of reorient myself about how to be a musician, how to practice, how to face up to what you think you know and what you do know and what you don't know, how to approach playing and music as a lifelong quest,
In other words, he was a little bit strict as well.
Crazy strict. I swear I had a couple of lessons that were no longer than 45 seconds, because if you made a mistake, he would get up, he'd walk over to his Braille accounting book and just sit there. And that meant you had to go and lay down the money and leave. And you'd leave, and there would be like a walk of shame, because you'd walk out of the door and in the hallway, there'd be 6 other students waiting there, and they'd look at you like, don't worry about it. Happens to all of us.
Did that carry on to your students? Would if I was to interview any of your other students, and like I say, I will mention those names in just a little bit, folks, because the list is very impressive. Would they think you were a strict student, or would they think you were
some of them? Yeah. I mean, if like I had students who came in and they'd say, I want to be great. I want to be the greatest I can be. I want to be the greatest guitar player. I want to be famous, that kind of stuff. Then I'd say, okay, I'm just going to turn the screws. I did teach 8-year-old kids who would come in with action figures and put them on the amp, so of course I wouldn't lean on them. I taught, doctors, lawyers, race car drivers, you name it, construction workers who would come in, dirty with injured hands after a hard day work. And they just want to play some Creedence Clearwater. So I'm not going to lean on them. They just,
were you tough on Steve Vai though? But because you saw that, it
was impossible. He was so good. Every time that I would teach him something, he'd come back and he'd have it down, and I'd be looking at him thinking, next week he'll do that better than me. I'm guaranteed, So with Steve, it was like I was just barely ahead of him. I mean, I think I'd only been playing about a year, maybe a year before him. So it wasn't like I was an advanced player. I was just a little bit ahead. And
you guys were just pushing each other up, I think.
Yeah, he was so much fun because he's just the natural musician and he's really driven. That's always the case, if the student, like you take Kirk Hammett, he came already, he could play great. He really was a good musician, naturally could pick up a guitar, make music, and put a smile on people's faces, right? That's our job, right?
Kurt is only the guitarist in Metallica, folks. in case of those of you that just you saw Joe just say the name and slide off his tongue, but no, it's the guitarist of Metallica, and here he is teaching him, and
he worked really hard. He showed up as much as he could. Sometimes his mom would come to pay for the lessons. I mean, this is real neighborhood stuff, you know what I mean? But he worked really hard, and the thing that really helped, besides his obvious talent, was that he knew what he wanted, and so he could express to me, this, Joe, this is what I like. I like these players. How do I do that? What are they doing? What are the ingredients? And that's really my job, is to provide the ingredients and not to affect the student style. I don't want them to play like me. At the time, as you mentioned, I was in the Squares, so it was a completely different style from all my students. Most of my students were young, and they were about to change the world with thrash metal and
that whole scene coming out of the Bay Area.
Yeah. So.